gentlemen, sisters and misters, freaks, geeks, and super rad peeps, you are awesome. Thank you so much for being here with me. I am your host, Kitty D. Welcome back to the Canna-Buzz Conversations podcast, where we are creating space to clear the stigma and see through the smoke surrounding the cannabis industry. On today's episode, we are picking apart the COA. What is it? Why does it help us? And some red flags to be on the lookout for. And again, on today's episode, we have the COO and Chief Chemist of Kooka Manufacturing and the brains behind the Beezwax brand, my cousin and super rad friend. Welcome again, Michael Donnelly.
Thanks for
Welcome
having me.
back, babe. Thanks for being here again.
Of course.
Now, I'm going to dive right into it because that's what we're working on. Oh, we're on this camera. We're working on COAs.
Yep.
So I want you, as a chemist, as someone who looks at it from scientifically, can you bring it down to maybe more of a keep it simple, sweetheart type of a mentality for us? What is a COA?
Yep, a COA is Certificate of Analysis, and it's to check to see you're making what you say you're making. So if I make a 5 milligram gummy, I will send in a test batch to a lab, and they'll give me a print off of all the cannabinoids that are inside there. So if I'm trying to make a 5 milligram gummy, I send in what I think should be 5 milligrams, and they might tell me I'm bogus, or they might say I'm getting close, or I'm accurate. So then you just tweak your formula until you get the right milligrams or cannabinoid profile, or you can switch your formulas on anything. This is simple for gummies, but it goes across everything for cannabis. Anything from flower, pre-rolls, which is flour as well, smokables, to drinks, any of these types of things. Every single one of these, depending on what kind of material you're working with, you can send it in and it'll tell you what kind of cannabinoid profiles you use. At least that's what we use it for in our industry.
Got it. So every single product that you make or anyone else makes can have and should have a certificate of analysis attached to it.
It should. And it's becoming, for when we first started, it's all hemp-based stuff. So it wasn't as predominant. There were loose rules on you need to test like one time and make sure you're doing it accurately, and the rest of your gummies are fine. And as we've evolved, it's every batch we pour. So every single one, we send in multiple gummies from each batch, and then we get a print off saying we did our stuff accurately.
Okay, and the accuracy, I mean, that's where the consistency of the dosage, of the potency, that's where that all comes from.
Yes,
because
exactly.
you want to make sure that you are getting the milligram
correct
in every single gummy, edible, whatever potency you're looking for.
Yeah,
right?
And that's what a COA is for. It's to certify that you did it correctly. Certificate of Analysis.
So if you guys are sending back and forth with this analysis company, right?
Yep.
Are you like really good friends with these people?
You
because
get to know.
I mean, you have to be in essence, right? Like
Yes.
you have to know these people. You have to have a good rapport with these people because you are bingoing back and forth, ping pong.
Correct.
With you guys are almost there, or this is in it, or whatever. So you can actually tweak your formula to be exactly what you're telling the consumer it is.
Yes, and what we're trying to hit.
Sure.
Correct. Because we all have good intentions to try to make the right product, but there's different ways of, like when I even receive things. So if I'm making gummies, I'm getting a pure form of THC, and I'm trusting that they show me a certificate, the people I'm buying it from, show me a certificate saying it's 90%. So now I know how to math that out to make sure my gummies are accurate.
Got it.
And if for some reason they're off also, then my formula's off, and then I can check it with my gummies. And it's came back like that before. Not every lab, no one's trying to hurt anyone, but it might be an in-house COA that they used, and it might not have the same accuracy as something if they went to a third party and got a COA for it. And so you always have to test everything. You can test your materials beforehand or afterhand, depending on what you're making. And then you can test anything from cannabinoids. We'll be using these same COAs long-term in the marijuana industry for any types of solvents. So like if you're using alcohols, or if you're using methane or butane or anything to do like a concentrate, it can test for all molecules, not just cannabinoids. It's used to find if you have different types of molds, if you have different types of stuff in your soils, if you have your water content is good. All these types of things can be tested with an HPLC machine, which is how you get the COA.
And this might be a little bit, I don't want to say too sciencey on us, but you are a chemist. Like you are, you have a degree in chemistry.
Yes.
And so when you're looking at a COA, or like you said, the solution or the solvent, or how does this machine work to give you what you're looking for on an analysis?
So no matter what the material, you kind of emulsify it or blend it up into a chunk. So it could be a gummy. You take a certain weight of a gummy and you blend it into a solution. So you have this, and you inject it into this machine. The machine, at the end of the day, to make it easy, it's essentially, it can predict how big the molecule, roughly what type of structure the molecule has, because of how it it's kind of like having a magnet. Every molecule has a certain type of polarity, meaning like it's attracted to each other or it's not. And so you can determine based off of weight and polarity of a molecule to figure out what molecules are coming out at a certain time. So you essentially inject it into this machine and it'll come out at a certain time based off of weight and a few other factors, depending on what you're looking for.
So, like, when you're talking magnetic, like, we as humans have a magnetic field.
Yeah.
Every molecule, every atom also has a magnetic field, and you want them to either
repel
or they interact. Just
Yeah.
like us as humans, we interact with each other's magnetic fields.
The best way that I've heard it described is it's kind of like a droplet of water. Why does it kind of hold shape? A droplet of water always holds shape because the water molecules are attracted to each other.
Oh.
And so, and they're very much shaped like this, but it's they have a polarity to them. And every molecule, like cannabinoids, they have a certain polarity in a certain direction, along with a certain molecular weight. So, like, it'll pass through this machine at a certain speed based off of its polarity and its weight. And so when it comes out, we can read all the stuff that's coming out at certain times, and then we can predict what molecules those are. So like if we're looking for like a THC9 or a Delta 8 or anything, a CBD, it'll come out at a certain time, and as we see how much material is coming out at that time against all the other material that comes out, we know what percentage of that solution or that gummy or that plant is THC. And so it helps us predict what percent it is.
Sure, that makes sense.
And that's how HPLC is.
Thank you for, I don't want to say dumbing it down, but thank you for making that as simple as you did.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to like the percentages of THC.
Yep.
Right? So when you're looking at a product, when you're looking at a certificate of analysis, when I see tetrahydrocannabinol, I see a big percentage.
Yeah.
Does that percentage mean it's more potent? Does that, does more percentage of THC mean a better product?
Twofold. So it does when you're inhaling something. That's really the only time that I see it. Inhaling, or if you're also maybe absorbing it across the skin, is a percentage count. Most of us we see a percentage and we'll say, oh, that's really good. Or like weed, we know a higher percentage of THC, you are absorbing more when you inhale it.
Got it.
And the same thing with a vape. But then when it comes to gummies, it really doesn't mean much. A gummy, you don't care about the percentage, and I've seen this a lot in the industry, and people are evolving, but it's not so much a percentage of the gummy, it's the milligrams per serving that you have to look for.
Okay.
Because it maths out a certain way, depending on how big the gummy is. It doesn't matter what percentage the gummy is, because that's not what's getting you high. It's the milligrams you're absorbing total by edibles. So it's a milligrams per serving you should be looking for.
And that's why they say take half of one first if you're just getting into it, just because you don't know what that dosage or that potency is going to do, or the benefit / effect you're going to get.
For sure.
So paying attention to the milligram per edible or milligram when you're doing edibles.
Yes.
It's about the milligrams, whereas with a vapable, a smokable, a topical, it's going to be about the percentage of THC.
Correct.
So twofold, like you said.
Yeah.
It depends on what product you're partaking in.
Yes, exactly. It gets confusing. The only time it doesn't matter is kind of more of an edible. But smoking and inhaling something, the percentage does matter, because then you're getting a higher concentration as you're inhaling. So that's why people say, oh, this weed's really good, or this clocked out at 34%. That makes sense there. But when it comes to edibles, don't worry about the percentage, but look at servings, like milligrams per serving.
Got it.
Because I make 2 gummies normally, and one's a 4 gram, so it's a big gummy, and I make a 2 gram by weight. The gummy's smaller and bigger. But both of them are 5. But what you would see is, if you see my smaller gummy, it has a high percentage of THC because it's smaller, but it's the same milligrams in each.
Okay.
So you're getting the same effects from these 2 gummies, but they're different sizes.
Oh, wow.
And that's why percentage can be confusing, and people should more pay attention. If they're inhaling it, it's a higher percentage. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's better, but people that are chasing the psychoactive effects, when you're inhaling something, you want a higher percentage so that you can feel the effects faster. But that doesn't mean that's what everyone's looking for. Someone that's new might want a lower percentage
for sure.
to kind of ease themselves into it.
Gauge their way into it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, dip your toes, y'all. Dip your toes. Chill. So more potency, more THC doesn't necessarily mean a better high and or a better product.
Yes.
It's all within our own endocannabinoid system
Correct.
that we need to be aware of, and the effects and the benefits of what
Yes.
a certain product does to our own body.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
If I were to look at a COA, and like I said, I saw the big percentages, and if you go onto Beezwax website, there literally is a tab that says COA that knocks down every single thing that you produce.
Yes, and we've adjusted it. So over the past, like, our regulatory body had said, like, I need COAs. They batch things certainly, like, differently. So I was, like, batching out all my indicas before. I would get an average, and I would do the same process for all my indicas, all my hybrid gummies, all my sativa gummies. And the state was okay then, but now they're trying to get more specific, which I'm fine with. Regulations are great, but now I do it for every flavor and every strain. So blue raspberry, sativa, hybrid, and indica, and on our website, you'd click on it, and we do this every time we run gummies now. So there's new batching going up constantly.
So there is much more. It's like you said, it's not a batch. It's now a singular batch. And you guys started batching before you need to necessarily. I know we were talking about that last time with regulation.
There's ways of doing different things, but we're doing it as we're shrinking down our batching into something that's way more controllable. So if there's any issue, we're going to be able to pluck that little issue out and never release it to the public.
Because before, when you were batching all indicas, you'd have to pull every indica. And I mean, that's just a waste of money.
Yeah, and it's brutal. Like, it was very much the same process. I'm always open to, if it's the same process every time, I can batch all these out at the same time. But now we're doing it just more accurately, and the state's asking for these things, and we're moving into marijuana. So we personally, as a company, are getting ready for the micro detailed regulations.
Yes.
And so we want to know that every little thing we do is correct and accurate, what we're giving our consumers. And so we want to do this. The state has a vague way of saying what a batching is, but I would say time you mix up something and you're going to put it into a product, test that portion of it. So if I'm testing up only say 1 liter of something and I'm putting it into a product, I want to trace that 1 liter throughout the whole thing.
Wow.
If I'm going to make 5 gallons, that's different, or anything like that. Just always test this one piece. Testing is very important, and that's where you get the COAs.
And I know, like you said, I want to commend you. Testing is very important, because I know that you guys as a company have the pillars of, like, consistency and safety always first, and also potency, because it's fresh, because it's moving in and out of the stores and everything so quickly, which is amazing. But then at the same time, I want to know, with the COA, is that just information that you have access to, or does me as a consumer, can I come at you and be like, yo, I really want to know what is in this?
You can, and you should. I'm surprised that more consumers don't pay attention to COAs as much. Right now, the only people that seem to care is the regulatory body, and they're there for the consumer to make sure we're doing our job right. So you should be able to have some type of assumption, if the regulatory body is watching over us and it's on the shelves, that it's safe. But if you want to see exactly what it is, you can always look for a batch number. At least on our products going out right now, there's a batch number, and you can go to our COA page and find the exact COA with that batch number, and you can pull up the profile. So if I'm trying to make a 5 milligram gummy, I try to stay as close to 5 milligrams as possible, but that batch could come out as 5.15.
Sure.
The next one could come at 4.5. Like, it can range a little bit, just because everything from starting materials to the whole process of making something, say a gummy, for example, it's super easy to vary things within 5 to 10 degrees or percentages of that THC level. But you can see exactly what this bag is. So before, I saw bad practices as people didn't know how to make gummies right, so there'd be hot batches. Our process is extremely good, meaning we have the same THC level from the beginning of our batch to the end of our pour. The THC is blended really well. At the beginning of when hemp-derived gummies came out, or THC gummies came out, you'd see more of like a low milligram here, high here, low here for a batch. Ours are very consistent, so you won't see that variation in our full batch, but you will see it from batch to batch, depending on how accurate we are with weighing out the THCs or any cannabinoid that we're putting into something.
Sure. And do you feel like you've pretty much solidified that process? Like, I know that you guys use the same candy-making machinery that Hershey's uses.
Yes, correct.
So when you're thinking about, man, Hershey's has been around for 150 years, every Hershey's bar that you taste is very consistent to taste like a Hershey's bar.
Yep.
So with that potency, that consistency in your potency, being able to maintain exactly the same milligram per piece
Yes.
is really important when it comes to getting the benefit that you're looking for.
Yes, and so you want to make sure your stuff is accurate. And even if it's not one of my products, there should be a batch number tied to a COA for everyone's products on the market. So I've seen it for everyone that makes in Minnesota. It's a very strict regulation that we should have COAs for every batch number. Anything you find on the shelves at any retail store will be there. And you can check yourself. You can actually see what you're consuming. So
sure.
There's like, when you're using even THC 9, and this all comes back to the COA and how it's processed. When I get THC 9 or Delta 8 or 9, it has residuals of some CBDs, some other cannabinoids in there in its pure form. But when I am using it for a gummy, you'll see like it had some mostly Delta 9. You'll see it had a slight amount of Delta 8. It had some CBDs in there. So you can actually see exactly what's inside the product that you're using. And you know what kind of effects you're getting.
Right.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I see a lot of nah, nah, I don't want that, no.
Yeah.
What does the nah stand for, and what should I look for?
Yep.
What should be a nah?
Yeah, is a lot of things. Well, it depends. If your gummies in your bag says it's a 5 milligram THC gummy alone, then it should really be mostly just 9 in there, around the 5 milligram per serving strength.
Okay.
The NOS it should, in an ideal world and scientifically perfect world, if we could isolate all of the THCs correctly and perfectly, you would only see one number on Delta 9, but then on Delta 8, Delta 10, on HHC, on CBD, CBN, CBGs, all that would be NA. It's not in there.
Right.
And so ideally you want to see that in most COAs. So like mine, like if I'm doing a THC 9 version, you might see a couple CBDs, but super low number. Then you'll see some Delta 8, super low number, but you're going to see a high, like very close to that 5 milligram for the THC 9.
So what I'm hearing you say is it's very, very difficult to take a cannabinoid and separate it off to just be that cannabinoid, just straight THC, straight CBD.
Yes.
And because of the entourage effect, you're going to have multiple, even traces of cannabinoids.
Yeah.
You might even have trace THC in something that's not meant to be psychoactive.
Yeah,
But that THC is actually helpful because it helps with the entourage effect.
Yeah.
And we're actually going to do an episode on the entourage effect, P.S. It's coming later. But what I'm hearing is everything should be as close to possible when you're looking at the COA. Like if it's 5 milligrams of THC, you're going to want to look for 5 milligrams THC. But then also the NOS should be mold, metals. All of those ones should obviously never have any percentages next to them.
Correct.
Ever in a million bajillion years. Ever.
And
Ever.
Yeah. And in the hemp industry, we don't need to do full panels, but we do it on a lot of our stuff, meaning looking for the residuals or the molds or any kind of toxins or heavy metals or all that type of stuff. In marijuana, you will see this, and you want to make sure all that's not. Like, you don't have any of it. And the entourage effect is amazing, like you're saying. That's also why it's not too bad to have like the other cannabinoids in there in small amounts.
Of course.
Do want to have some in there for everything, because the effects are more natural. Because in the plant, you're going to find Delta 9, you're going to find residuals of D8, HHC, a bunch of what we think are synthetics, but they're actually naturally occurring.
Sure.
And then some terpenes, and you're going to find CBDs, all this other stuff. Yeah.
So I kind of look at the body as a car, right? You need gasoline, you need windshield wiper fluid, you need, a brake fluid, all of this stuff.
Yes.
And all of those cannabinoids are a form of one of those.
Yes.
So if you're just getting gasoline in your car, you also need oil.
Yeah.
So those traces are going to actually help the car move forward,
give you
better.
The effect you're looking for.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. If I were to find a company that doesn't have a COA, but they have fantastic freaking marketing, should I trust the analysis, or should I trust that package is super freaking rad?
Always trust the analysis. I
know I have to ask that, but I see that a lot too, and I wanted to bring it up because marketing is a completely different animal than analysis of product.
Yeah.
Like, you can market something as whatever you want, but when you drill down and you find that certificate of analysis, that would be the more important thing in any product you're intaking.
Yes.
So if a company doesn't have COAs available, would you avoid said company?
I would. And it shows their integrity too. I've literally done it recently, is we made a bunch of stuff thinking like we were being accurate. it's my job, like, we found out and got a test result that it was outside our 15% threshold of what we like as a company, and also what the state allows. But if it's not within 15% of that cannabinoid, I had to throw all those away. I had to destroy over 100,000 gummies just for them not meeting the criteria that we uphold.
Right.
But it doesn't mean everyone's going to do that. We don't know if people are going to do that. We know we do that. It's best practice to do these types of things, but maybe they'll just slip it into a bag of gummies anyways,
Sure.
or they'll put it into a product.
So they don't use them. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
man. Okay.
And so
some of those gummies might be 5 milligrams,
Yes.
but some might be, and what you call it, a hot pack?
batch.
A hot batch?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that means like,
Yeah.
hot means it's not what it says it is.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And do you feel like hot batches are still pretty prevalent as the regulations are coming down, and as
Yes.
you are obviously through the pipeline with OCM
Yeah.
and all of that jazz? Do you feel like hot batches are still pretty prevalent on the market?
I don't know now. I would say when Minnesota specifically we were in a limbo of when we had a bunch of companies from out of state bringing products in.
Sure.
And we've kind of avoided that. And so, like, now we're really strict, and we've learned hand in hand with OCM, because they had to learn the whole process too. Like, we were making gummies before the OCM was created as a company.
Holy shit.
And so,
Okay.
like, we met the first few employees they had. We had them come through. And so we've all been learning together on what best practices are for regulating, so we get accuracy, so the consumer's getting what they ask for. And this all dials down to having the right COAs, and to be able to track that your process is correct, validate that you're doing the correct thing, and to make sure the products we're receiving before we give it to you is accurate as well.
Yeah.
So
What that boils down to me is actually a word called transparency.
Yeah.
Which sounds like Beezwax, Kooka, everything you manufacture is extremely transparent.
Yes.
And also the fact that you had the people from OCM, the brand new employees, come to your manufacturing warehouse and all that jazz. You want to be upfront.
Yes.
More than anything. And
Yeah.
that's a pretty bold thing when we're talking about something that has such a stigma like cannabis does.
Yes.
Because cannabis has been on the black market since I started partaking a long time ago.
Yeah.
But what I want to know next is, does a COA expire? Because, like, once you get it done and you know that that's the formulation, how often do you guys get COAs done?
Yeah.
And does a product expire?
What I would look for is, it's not that it so much expires, but you should see that there's always updated ones. We've been working to make sure ours are always updated on our website. Like, I had old type of batching, and I have to make sure that I'm constantly putting up the new ones so that the consumer and the state and the regulators can see these as well. And I struggle with this constantly. We have tons of SKUs out on the market, and we are being as transparent as we can. I wish I could just give everybody, even the OCM, the login to the back of the lab results I get, to make it easy, but there's a way of me having to grab it, then give it to my graphics and website guy, then him putting it up and making sure he understands what products it's supposed to go on to. And it's not always easy for everyone to understand these things. So
when you're saying it's not easy for them to understand it, I would love for you, as a chemist, in the position that you are, what is the biggest misconception about lab testing or COAs that you feel maybe a regular consumer of cannabis products might need to be enlightened on?
We said that if it has a COA, you should trust it more, and you should. But there's also, what lab is it from? That's one thing. We're doing a transition to one of the higher accredited labs now, especially in the eyes of what OCM regulations are for Minnesota. We're transitioning a lot of our samples to what the state trusts as well, the lab they trust. There's another whole part of lab testing. One lab might have a certain practice. I know all the labs in Minnesota now are standardizing how they test products, so that if I sent it to one lab or the other lab, I would get the same result back from both of them.
Sure.
I've struggled in the past in the hemp industry is that I hear that a lab's really good out of California. They might do thousands and thousands of testing. You should also be very weary on something like that, because they're doing so much pass-through, but how are they getting the results so quick, and are they accurate? I'm dealing with one that I've used for a long time, and now I'm slowly transitioning away from using them and only using Minnesota's largest, who I consider like a highly accredited lab. They did medical devices testing for different things. They do they've been doing this in the hemp industry for Minnesota a lot.
Sure.
And I know there's a handful, but I really like this one lab now. And so even my formulas are changing a little bit, because this lab over here might have said it was a 5 milligram gummy, and they're reading it at a 4.3. Well, there's some reason. You have to learn what labs are accredited and not, and you can look those up.
Yeah.
They should have all their credentials on their website. If you ever look up a COA, will say the company it came from. It'll say what company asked them to test it.
Okay.
Like, so Kooka or Beezwax, and then it'll also say like what product's being tested and what the results are. Look up the lab too. Always look up, what lab is this? Are they accredited? Are they accredited by the BCA, or do they have any other criteria that they test for that shows that they know what they're doing?
Sure.
That's
one of the bigger things. Do you want to call out that lab so you can actually call them out?
I love Legend Labs in Minnesota. Like,
we're going to tag you in the socials,
they're
Legend.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
They're really good, and they've been doing testing for a long time in Minnesota, and they've done medical device stuff. Now they've done the hemp industry in Minnesota, and now they're doing all the medical cannabis, and now they're going to be doing recreational cannabis as well. And
so they know what they're doing.
Yeah, and the transparency. Like, I want to be transparent. They're always transparent, and they hold themselves to such a high standard that it means I know my result was right, meaning I can feel better that I'm creating a product good for the consumer.
I don't know if y'all felt that, but he was like, they have such a high standard. Like, you got into that.
It really matters, because I've worked with people that I realized didn't have this high standard. And so then
that screwed up your whole batches, and that screwed up all of what you were trying to accomplish.
Yes. Just recently, it was like the hundreds of thousands of gummies I had to throw away. I was doing the same formula that this other lab told me, and I wanted to see how it would stand up. And I now they don't have my credibility. I don't feel like they're credible.
Got it. And we're not going to call them out. Yes. No throwing people under the bus.
And so now I'm transitioning over. So now my formulas are changing just a little bit, and it's fine. It's good. It means that it's more accurate to the consumer. And so...
Well, and I know you guys just came out with a whole line of the sleep-style gummies, where there are some with THC, some without CBN, CBG, and creating all of these new formulas. So you obviously are reformulating and utilizing this Legend Laboratories that is getting you exactly... Correct. The information you want, so that you can put those numbers forward with confidence and consistency and the transparency of having the COA.
Yeah, what was those sleep gummies, they have 3 active ingredients. So now I have to hold myself to a standard. It's hard enough getting within like a 10% variation on one all the time. That can be done. Then 2 things if you're adding another one, but 3 on all those. And we were extremely consistent, and it's been awesome. Yeah. It was better than I expected for the results. Like, all of the lab results came out really well.
And that actually, I mean, obviously it comes with time. It comes with experience. But also it comes with trusting the people who are doing your analysis.
Yes.
To come back at you and say, hey, this is right, this is wrong, let's change this and move forward.
Yes.
Because then, like I said, the confidence going forward into the consumer arena is so much better. And then they also have access to all of that information if they want it. They don't have to go through the company. They can literally call and do it themselves and speak to potentially the person that did the analysis?
Yes, exactly. And there'll be a thing too, like right now I'm talking about my hemp stuff.
Sure.
There's going to be a whole thing. I've never seen a consumer or anyone I know, if they go to Michigan or if they go to Vegas or anything like that, and they see the results, they see a print off of like what the metric tells them, which is like what we're using in the recreational marijuana stuff. When we come to marijuana, we have a metric system which helps us track from seed to sale to the final product.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing. There'll be a COA attached to every batching from that metric system in the marijuana industry, which is super exciting, because that's kind of what we're mimicking. And I might have mentioned last time.
Yeah,
is that
I remember that.
In the hemp side.
But that's super exciting.
Yeah, and it's all traceability, transparency, and to make sure you have what you have.
Which underlyingly on the foundation of everything, I just want to call out that to me as a consumer, and me learning my way through the cannabis industry, this feels like a really safe option in order to begin a cannabinoid routine, ritual, supplementation. Like, it's almost like a vitamin.
Yes.
Like, hey, did you take your vitamin C gummy?
Yeah.
Well, hey, did you take your CBD and CBN gummy? Or what have you? Because it does the same thing. We have a system,
Yep.
like just like our body likes vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin C, and we need
Yeah.
iron, we need all of this. We also have cannabinoids that our
Correct.
body needs as well. So
Correct.
for you to know the potency, for you to know the correct dosage,
Yep.
that is just going to be a product that is safe
Yes.
for the consumer moving forward
Yeah.
to know exactly what they're getting into and exactly what is in their product.
Yeah. Just like 5 milligrams might do something for you, it's going to do something for me.
Sure.
And so when you have
And it might not be the same thing.
Yes, and if you took the same gummy, we took the same gummy, at least we know the effects of what 5 milligrams gave us.
Right.
And if there's not the right COAs or the transparency of the company, you might, everyone that I know, and we all have stories of people taking one gummy once and another gummy a different time and totally different effects.
Right.
And it's because the regulations weren't there yet. Like, we weren't up to the standards of testing every little piece of it to make sure that we have a consistent amount of something. It's kind of like alcohol. We all know that it's like 3-2 beer, or
Yeah.
what we're
Yeah.
going to get from
Yeah.
all these things, or a
What
certain
is-
wine.
what is the effect
You
of
know
what
how
the-
many
yeah.
glasses.
Yep.
It's going to be the same thing once regulations catch up. And not over regulations, but making sure everything's the same. Is that 5 milligrams says 5 milligrams? I know what 5 milligrams is going to do for my body.
For sure.
I know what 10 is going to do to me. I know what 15 is going to do to me. And everyone will be able to figure this out as it's more exposed to everybody.
Right.
But how you make sure that that's right is COAs, and that the results are the right. So you can always check what you're actually consuming.
And I wanted to say exposure. I think
Exposure.
so many people are in the majority where they have not been exposed to safe cannabis
Correct.
products.
Yeah, like we used to just
to
grab
intake.
weed.
Right.
Yeah.
To intake. They just get something from their guy down the street or whatever the hell,
Yeah.
right? And before you couldn't even choose the strain. I was like,
Yeah.
well, whatever you got, I guess that's what I'm smoking
Yeah.
today.
And you'll hear that from a lot of older users.
Yes.
Like, weed was just weed back then. Now, like, you'll see some of the older guys that used to love smoking weed. Now they get even nervous with some of the new weed
Sure.
out because the science is getting better, the testing's getting better. We can modify a strain to make it more potent.
Absolutely.
And so, like, when these guys smoke the stuff that's coming out and what
and that
we
can
will be-
scare the shit out of you, by the way.
Seriously.
When you're used to just having a bowl, whatever, and all of a sudden you're like,
Yeah.
and that'll scare you away from, because
Yeah.
when you don't know the potency, when you don't know what is in a product,
Yeah.
you don't know the benefit and or the effect that it's going to create,
Correct.
which is therefore going to create anxiety around using it, which is
Yes.
potentially going to be a bad trip or a
Yes.
bad high,
Yes, exactly.
a bad psychoactive
Yep.
episode.
And knowing, then there's going to be another thing, which is kind of off topic from the COAs, but it's how you consume it and how quick it kicks in, and learning those things. Because a lot of times with gummies, you hear so many, I've heard personally tons of stories where someone will eat one, they don't feel it, so they eat the next one.
A
It
girlfriend of
double
mine did that.
stacks.
It was so bad.
Yeah, right?
It was so bad. And that of course stuck with me too.
Yeah.
I know I had to take her to the hospital. Like she was talking like this because she couldn't even move her mouth.
She dissociated,
And I took her into the
yeah.
hospital, and the nurse literally looked at me. She's like, I wish I could wear a t-shirt that says, don't eat the whole cookie.
Yeah.
Because this was in Colorado when it first started.
Yeah.
She's like, I wish I could tell you how many people come in scared shitless
Yeah.
because of taking too much dosage and not being able to control, right? So
Yeah.
this transparency, this consistency in dosage, this
Yeah.
potency is really a safe bet
Yeah.
into... even the old smokers
Yeah.
are now being given a new doorway to clear the stigma and clear smoke around cannabis, because it is such an amazing tool,
Correct.
an amazing thing that we have in our own bodies that we can now supplement. But making sure you do it safely
Yes,
is
correct.
is the next step for people that are not partaking
Yeah.
in new ways.
Yep. It's just like taking vitamins. You
Just
want
like
a certain
supplements,
dose.
yeah, a
Each of
supplementation.
us need something different
Right.
for vitamin D or C or any of it.
And you don't want to take too much vitamin.
Yeah.
A lot of times your body will release it all, but at the
Yeah.
same time, and no one has overdosed, obviously, from THC, CBD,
No,
and doobie
but
doobie doo.
when it's not tested properly, people have thought they're overdosing on this stuff.
Sure.
And no one's ever overdosed on THC before, but they will think they're overdosing
Well,
because of that panic.
Because
like
of
your
that
friend
panic.
had. Yeah.
And also, I've heard it plenty of times, and maybe it's just a rumor, but people are getting things laced with fentanyl.
Yeah.
And a COA will
Yeah.
literally give you the peace of mind. You can sleep at night knowing
Yeah.
there is no bullshit
Yeah.
fentanyl or whatever have you
Correct.
in your product.
And there's news, there was, even in the hemp industry, we saw this one time, something popped hot for, I believe it was fentanyl one time, a few years ago, but it was interesting and confusing for the entire market.
Of course.
Like, what is happening here? And so that's why regulations are great. And what's going to be great is this metric in the cannabis industry that we're going to be using. It's from seed to sale. You know where the plant grew. You know where it was processed. You'll know what product it went into. If it's just flower,
and who touched it.
And who touched it. Exactly. You'll know everything through the whole process.
Yeah.
Yes.
From the growing of it into the creation of the distillate or the roll of the pre-roll or whatever it may be, you're going to know exactly who has touched it, where it's been, where it came from, and how it is going to benefit and or affect you because of the percentages and the milligrams and the potency and everything that you're doing. And I really want to go into dosage. We're going to have tons of these episodes. Once a month, we're going to come out with a Canna-Buzz conversation. Super psyched to have you again, Michael. Yeah. Thank you for being here. But I want to talk about the entourage effect next, and then also talk about dosage, because I think that's something that I crave, knowing what is it going to do to my body and how do I partake in it in the most safe way possible for the best benefit in the long term. Because this is a new supplementation and vitamin regime that we're being given. So might as well make the best of it and start with safety and consistency, which I know Beezwax and Kooka Manufacturing does. So
I appreciate it.
Thank you for obviously clearing the smoke from the cannabis industry as you do. You are one of the smartest kids I know. And I know you're my cousin, so I'm a little bit biased, but you are one of the smartest guys I know, and I appreciate your time and your expertise. So thank you for being here, and we'll see you again next time.
All right. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, sisters and misters, to all of the freaks and geeks and super rad peeps, thank you so much for being here at the Canna-Buzz Conversations podcast. I hope that today you learned a little bit more about the COA, the Certificate of Analysis, what to look for, why it's important, and why safety and consistency are key when it comes to your products. Again, I'd like to thank Michael Donnelly, the chemist for Kooka Manufacturing and the brains behind the Beezwax brand, for being here today, for sharing his expertise, and for bringing forward a little bit more information so we can clear the stigma surrounding cannabis. My name is Kitty. You are awesome. I look forward to seeing you again very, very soon.